Hey guys, this is Chris, and today we'll be exploring Mashape. You go to mashape.com and you'll see this page right here. And they call themselves a cloud API hub where you can consume, distribute, and manage APIs. For me, I found it very useful because if I'm consuming APIs, normally a developer would have to go through or read through a lot of documentation. And in my case, I'm a very lazy developer. I just want to try out one of many endpoints from that service and just see if it fits my requirements. And if it doesn't, then I'll just move on. And Mashape does that very well because it distills the API in its purest form. And what I mean by that is let's just go through the service so you know what I'm saying. So if I'm looking for an API, and one in particular that I have in mind is a WordCloud API, so I'm just gonna type in Word in here, and it's gonna take me to this Word Cloud Maker API. Cool thing about this is, as you can see, there isn't a lot of word or text information right here, but it gives you the basic information for you to be able to consume that API in your application. And you can see here it says you can generate word clouds from blocks of text. If you've seen a cloud tag on a website, that might be familiar to you. It's the same thing. So it generates clouds of text or from blocks of text. So and I want to use this API. You can see I have the endpoint information. It tells me that I need to use post. And right down here is where things get very interesting. You have a parameter list, and there's some text fields right here. You can basically just plug in information in that parameter list, and it's gonna give you the result as if you were consuming it from your application. So it gives you a way to test the API without having to go through coding yet. So let's do that right now. I'm just gonna type in the height, which is 200 pixels. Hello world. Not really useful information or information to provide on this API, but let's just try it out. And 300. And this other information config is optional, so I'm just going to leave that out. Before I press login to test, you can see it's requiring me to log in. And for you to log in, you need to have an account. So you need to sign up. And I have another window here, which I already have logged in because I've signed up for an account. It's the same thing, but you can see on the right side, I'm logged in right here. And if I want to test that, let's try it out again. 200, hello world, and let's say 300. It gives you, at the bottom, before you even press, it gives you the JSON result that you will get when you test it out. But in this case, let's just click on test endpoint, and it's going to go back to that service and come back to us with a result, which we see now. You have a response header, and then you have a JSON response right here. And the one that we're very interested in is this URL, which should have the image for the hello world text that we typed in. So as you can see here, you have two words. Obviously, if you have more words, you'd get a very nice cloud tag. The bigger words come out when there are more references to that word. Um, so this is all very interesting. As I said, instead of me having to go through all that documentation, I just want to test it out. It's really cool that I can do this. Now, it wouldn't be really useful unless you use it in your application, which in this case, I'm using it in one of my applications. I'm a Windows Phone developer, so I have a Windows Phone emulator open right here, and I modified one of my applications, which is HTML-Peak. HTML-Peak lets you view the source code of a web page, and I've modified this application so that I can use the WordCloud API from Mashape. Okay, so just to demonstrate what that looks like, I'm going to run this application, and you'll briefly see the source code of the application of this web page, cnn.com, and then in a while it's going to give us the image for based on that text. So as you can see here, there's a lot of home page. These are HTML tags. Obviously, if I'm modifying this application, I'd want to use the inner text of the HTML. So going back to my application, how do I use all this information back to my application? So if you're not a C# developer, if you're not a Windows Phone developer, that's fine. But basically what I'm doing here is I'm plugging in this base URL, which is the endpoint, which you've seen earlier on the Mashape documentation view. You have post requests, using the with the index.php, and then I have this is quite different. You didn't see this information, which is the authorization header. Um, we'll get back that in a bit, but basically I'm just adding the parameters 500 text block width, and this text to be displayed is the source code of the web page, or the HTML source of the page that I just plugged in, and I got back an URL, nice URL, nice JSON, which has the URL. So again, as I said, what is this Mashape authorization? Um, just to keep it short, you need to identify yourself to the service, and for that you need a public and private key, and you need a way to generate a key out of those public and private keys so that you can identify yourself to Mashape. And in order for you to do that, you need to go to the dashboard, um, you know, and I have the dashboard window open right here. And it's not really straightforward. You have to go to read the documentations, and this is it keeps changing, so you need to provide some feedback to them, and you might want to tell them, hey, can we get to that part faster? So once you get to read the docs, you click on consume APIs, and in here it will explain to you why you need a public and private key and what you need to do with those keys. So in my case, you get a public key from your dashboard, and then you also get a private key. Obviously, I'm not going to show you that because that is a way for someone else to use your account and impersonate themselves or yourself. So you generate that header, and you get a very long key, which you will then use in your application, which is what I'm doing right here. So obviously, I'm not going to show you the rest of the key. Now, another cool thing about Mashape is once you've done this first time, obviously every other service has the same way of consuming it, which is generating this Mashape link. So if I were to say, if I want to use a Bitly API, you might not have noticed, but I have a Bitly link here. Instead of me using the long WordCloud Maker link, I'm using a Bitly API, and I could easily consume that as well, because in this service, or in Mashape, Bitly is offered as well. So I even built my own Bitly API, so you can build your own APIs out of existing APIs. That makes sense, Inception. But so what I'm doing here is, again, it's the same, distilled information for you to start using that API. And obviously, you could still keep using the Bitly API. Go to their website; they have a really extensive documentation. And Mashape is not meant to be a replacement for that. But for me, the way I use Mashape is, I test new APIs and see what works and move on to the other one, and it's really nice. So that's how I've been able to use Mashape. And for me, I've consumed that API, and I'm just gonna show you how that looks like. And it also almost looks the same. And I'm just using a REST client library right here in C#, but you could obviously be using your own library to use a REST endpoint. But cool thing is, I just copy pasted that, plug in some base URL parameters on a parameter list, and I got back a really nice application which I could, I could share with my friends, and probably most likely I'm gonna publish this in Marketplace once I've polished it up. So if you find this interesting, or you think you're a lazy developer, you don't want to go through all the documentation and just test out APIs, you head over to mashape.com. Let's click right. Yeah, it's gonna take me to mashape.com, and just try it out. And there's a support button. They have an email address down here where you can provide your feedback as well. So hopefully that was useful. Thanks.